Hi there. In commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the publishing of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I would like to go over the book again, but this time as someone who spent a couple of years immersing myself in Persig's work. When I first discussed this book, chapter by chapter, I had little idea of what Persig was talking about. And so this channel has kind of been an exploration of Persig's work in an attempt to understand what he was saying. On this go-round, I want to say again that practically every line of the book is meaningful to me, but I want to pick a couple of passages from each chapter to discuss. So in chapter 1, here's the first one. Winters, when the sloughs were frozen over and dead, and I could walk across the ice and snow between the dead cattails and see nothing but gray skies and dead things and cold. The blackbirds were gone then, but now in July they're back, and everything is at its alivest. And every foot of these sloughs is humming and cricking and buzzing and chirping, a whole community of millions of living things, living out their lives in a kind of benign continuum. The word that really stands out in this passage is continuum. What a continuum means is something that unites, something that is like a common thread, let's say. But you never really see that common thread, or you don't think about it. In terms of the Eastern approach, that is a big part, and even maybe undergirds this novel, depending on how you want to see it, and Persig's work in general, I think that this continuum is an illustration of oneness, or to use an overused term, perhaps, non-duality. To show us what unites here, he first shows us the dead cattails and the frozen ponds. But in this continuum he describes, the unity is life, and that hum is the sound of all these living creatures, and we hear the unity. But we don't see it. We just see discrete creatures. I've seen these marshes 1,000 times, yet each time they're new. It's wrong to call them benign. You could just as well call them cruel and senseless. They are all of those things, but the reality of them overwhelms halfway conceptions. There! A huge flock of red-winged blackbirds ascends from nests in the cattails, startled by our sound. So you see, he's pulling out the red-winged blackbirds, and the red, of course, is so obvious. It really stands out. It pulls itself out of the continuum. But the sound that emerges from all these creatures illustrates, again, that unity. It gives us a perception of the continuum, which itself we can't see. We can only see when it manifests with the blackbirds. We'll never see the continuum. We can't see life itself, but we know it exists. Think of the continuum of light, or more broadly, the electromagnetic continuum. We don't see it. We see colors, we hear sounds. But even to describe all of perceived reality as an electromagnetic spectrum does not do justice to reality. That description is of perceived and material reality, perceived in the sensual sense. There's something under it on what reality rides, and what does reality ride upon? We'll probably never know. In fact, we can't ever know. And that's the mystery of reality. How can we understand it? How can we get to it? We can't. But you can get close. And Persig will give us ways to do so in this book. And that is one of the many powers of Persig's philosophy. Now here's the part of the book that's predictive, the one that gives us a premonition of the supercharged, super network world we live in. The Chautauquas were pushed aside by faster-paced radio, movies, and TV, and it seems to me the change was not entirely an improvement. Perhaps because of these changes, the stream of national consciousness moves faster now and is broader, but seems to run less deep. The old channels cannot contain it. And in its search for new ones, there seems to be growing havoc and destruction along its banks. There's a warning in this section, not really a grave one, but a warning nonetheless. It's not entirely an improvement, he says. And Persa gives us some hope that we can regroup and get a handle on the way information is conveyed so it doesn't bowl us over in an overwhelming but superficial tsunami of data. In the Chautauqua, I would like not to cut any new channels of consciousness, but simply dig deeper into old ones that have become silted in with the debris of thoughts grown stale and platitudes too often repeated. What's new is an interesting and broadening eternal question, but one, if pursued exclusively, results only in an endless parade of trivia and fashion, the silt of tomorrow. I would like, instead, to be concerned with what is best, a question which cuts deeply rather than broadly, a question whose answers tend to move the silt downstream. There are eras of human history in which the channels of thought have been too deeply cut and no change was possible, and nothing new ever happened, and best was a matter of dogma. But that is not the situation now. Now the stream of our common consciousness seems to be obliterating its own banks, losing its central direction and purpose, flooding the lowlands, disconnecting and isolating the highlands, and to no particular purpose other than the wasteful fulfillment of its own internal momentum. Some channeling deepening seems called for. The slightly stern and practical warning should have been heeded. Everything he warns about has come to pass, but in far more destructive ways than he imagined. Common consciousness has completely obliterated its own banks. That's true. Attention spans have been reduced to 15 seconds. We can be famous easily, any of us, in our own little world for 15 minutes. We are connected by the internet, but not by the physical world, and only by virtual reality. The lowlands, the common values, the institutions, even a truth we could agree on, seems to have disappeared. We didn't follow what was best. We allowed the new to sweep us away, the wasteful fulfillment of its own internal momentum. We are taking what's new to its conclusion, utter fragmentation. Ironically now, that tsunami leaves us with a sort of death. The internet, digital data, is too entrenched. It is now dogma that the internet is our way of life, and the fragmentation of attention is here to stay. And changing that seems almost impossible. Yet we continue to be addicted in the sequestered now world to what's new. And this blind pursuit is obliterating and locking in simultaneously. This inability to attend together is rendering us powerless against our own destiny. There is a way out of the mess we're in, and this mess threatens humanity in a variety of ways. It is to cease pursuing distracting, profitable, and instantly gratifying newness and begin once again to pursue what is best. But what is best? Our attention is too dispersed to agree on that at this point. So we need to rediscover what is best. We need to find value once again. And I propose the philosophy in this book can help us do that, can get us back on track. So as we go through it this time, maybe we can examine clues and ways of doing just that. So I hope that makes sense, and I'll see you next time.